If you're an Australian investor who's been dealing with ETFs for a while, you'll all be familiar with the AMIT statement that you get at the end of every financial year. Now, people often wonder, are the numbers on this statement actually that important? And I'm here today to tell you that unfortunately, yes, they're extremely important when it comes to calculating capital gains for tax time. I'm going to take you through two of the seemingly simple line items, and that's cost base increase and cost base reduction. And I'm going to show you how these numbers impact the shares that you already own when calculating the capital gains tax liability. So shortly we're going to jump over to the whiteboard. I'm going to take you through a simple example, and then we'll have a look at a few more complex examples so that you really get an understanding of how those things impact your holding. Let's do it. All right, so as always, ignore my atrocious handwriting. But we're going to look at cost base increase. So let's imagine originally you bought 10 shares at $10 for $100, right? So this gives you a cost base of $100 for your original purchase. Now let's say a year later we get our AMIT statement and it has a $5 cost base increase. Now that's important to note, and I'm about to show you why. Now we go forward into the future and we're going to sell $100 worth. We're going to sell the 10 shares for $100. So we thought we made a terrible decision and we want to get rid of these things for 100. Now, if you're not paying attention to your AMIT statement, you won't have factored this in. And you'll think, well, I bought it for $100 and now I'm selling it for $100, so therefore it's $0, right? No capital gain, no capital loss. But you haven't factored in the AMIT cost base increase. So what that means is this cost base increase actually affects the cost base of your original purchase. So instead of it being $100, this is actually $105. So now when we make the same sale, it's now a $5 capital loss, not a break even. So that's how the AMIT cost base increase affects the previous shares that you've already bought. So for this next example, I want to make it quite real world so that it simulates exactly what you'd have to do if you were going to do this manually. So we've got a couple of trades here. So here's our timeline. So imagine our first trade, we bought 8 shares at 67.15. So that's a pretty real looking trade in an ETF in Australia, and that gives us a total of 537.20. Now I've written some of these down so I don't make any mistakes. Now imagine a couple of months later, before the AMIT adjustment, we made another trade. So say we bought 15 shares at $68.53. And that gives us a total of, I'm not that good at maths to be able to do that on the fly, but $1,027.95. So a couple of trades there. Now imagine a couple of months later, we get an AMIT adjustment, a cost base increase. Now usually at these quantities and these values, the cost base increase will be pretty small. We're talking like 30, 40 cents. But for this example, I'm going to make it a bit bigger so it has more of an impact. So let's say the AMIT adjustment comes in at $6. Now how do we apply this $6 adjustment to these previous purchases? So what we want to do is take the $6 adjustment and then divide it by the current quantity. So we've got 15 shares plus 8, so that gives us 23. And again, not good at that maths off the top of my head. So here's a number I prepared earlier. That would give us 0.23 261. Now, what the hell do we do with this number? Well, we take this number and we add it on to the price of both of our parcels. So this one goes from 67.15 to 67.411. This one goes from 68.53, so 68.53 plus that gives us 68.791. So that is now how we've applied the adjustment across the shares. So this one becomes 539. So we're doing 8 times this now. 539.21. So if we now do a sell trade in the future, so imagine we sell 8 shares at some point in the future, and we're using the FIFO method, so the first in, first out, we would be selling this parcel of 8 shares. So instead of using the old cost base of, what was it, 537.51, I think it was, 537.20, we're now using a cost base of 539.21. So that's how you apply the adjustment across the multiple parcels. Now the reason we added on to the price is this might have only sold 4, for example. So those 4 using FIFO means we will have only sold 4 of this, so we'd have 4 left over. Because the price is now adjusted, that means that at some point in the future when we sell some more, this parcel is already adjusted with this AMIT adjustment factored in. So hopefully that makes sense for how to do a cost base increase. Let's take a look at a cost base decrease adjustment. Now, as you may have figured out by now, this is basically the exact opposite of how an increase works. So we'll cover a basic example first. So imagine we buy 10 shares for $10 to give us an $100 cost base in our first parcel. Then some point in the future we get our AMIT statement and it has a cost base decrease of $5. What happens is we take that $5 off this. So now instead of our cost base being 100, our cost base now becomes 95. So if we had at some point sold 10 shares for $100, like in our other example, when this was 100, you would have thought it was a break even, there was no gain or loss. But in this case, with the $5 cost base decrease, now it's 100 against 95, we've actually made a $5 capital gain. So that's how the cost base decrease works at a really basic level. But let's jump ahead and do the same complex example as before, but we'll factor in how a cost base decrease works instead. We're going to set up those same trades again. So we bought 8 shares at 67.15 for a total of 537.20. And then some point, a couple of months later, we bought another parcel of 15 shares for 68.53, and that gives us a total of 1,027.95. Now remember in our last example, we had a $6, but this time it's going to be a $6 cost base decrease. So how do we calculate that? Well, similar to before, it's exactly the same. So we take our $6 adjustment and we divide it by the current quantity of all the trades before it. So in this case, 23. And that gives us the 0.261 figure again. So before in the cost base increase, we added it to the price. This time, exact opposite, we're going to subtract it from the price instead. So let's now subtract that from these prices. So instead of 67.15, it becomes 66.889. So we've just subtracted that from the original price. And the next one, instead of 68.53, becomes 68.269. So we've now adjusted the price. So our original cost base of 537.20 changes again because it's now 8 times 66.889, and that gives us 535.112. So now our cost base has changed to this. So then when we sell this parcel in the future, we've now adjusted the price already. So hopefully now you've got a good understanding of how a cost-based decrease works from your AMIT statement. So the next question you might have is, how do you calculate these AMIT adjustments as more and more start racking up into the future? So imagine again we've got our $100 worth of shares, and then we have a cost base increase of $5 here, so that becomes 105, and then sometime later we get another cost base increase of 3, and then sometime later after that we have a cost base decrease of 2. How does that work? Well, it's exactly the same process that we went through in the previous calculations, but you just keep applying it in order. So in this case, the 100 would become 105 because we factored in the first cost base increase. Then we come along and there's 3. So now the cost base becomes 108. And then the cost base decrease of 2. So now the cost base becomes 106. So you can see you just process them in order across the previous parcels that you've owned. So now you've seen how that all works, you might be wondering, Navar, does that mean for the last 10 years of ETFs I've been buying, I need to go back and update all of those figures? And unfortunately the answer is yes, because every time you've received a distribution from one of those ETFs that has a cost base adjustment, you are supposed to apply that to your cost base so that when you sell those shares in the future, that cost base adjustment is factored in. Now, of course, you can do all this by spreadsheet and do all your own tracking, but as you'll know if you've worked in Excel for any more than 5 minutes, it can get pretty complicated, and if you're not an Excel wizard, you'll probably get the calculations wrong. So that's where you can use a tool like Navexa that I've built that will automatically handle all this stuff for you. All you do is enter in your AMIT statement at the end of every financial year. That'll apply it across all the distributions correctly, and then when you run the capital gains tax report, all of your figures are correct. So if you want to check that out, click the link in the description, have a 2-week trial, and see how easy it can be. If you enjoyed this video, remember to please give it a like and subscribe if you haven't already. That really helps me understand what kind of info to be doing more videos about. It also tickles the YouTube algorithm a little bit, and that gets us more views as well. So that's really appreciated. And on that note, I'll see you in the next video.